Hola, and welcome to the Costa Rica Travel and Living Podcast. I am your host, Jess Luecke. Today and for the next few episodes, I'll be filling in for Adam Baker. I'm a local travel consultant with NAMU Travel and focus on all things Costa Rica, but I also work with other Central and South America countries as well. I do live full-time here in Costa Rica. And today we're going to be joined by Matt Rosenthal, who's the co-owner and operations manager of Paddle 9. It's one of the top tour operators in the Manuel Antonio and Capos area here in the Central Pacific area of Costa Rica. If you're loving this podcast, please give us a like or a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. So without further ado, let's go chat with Matt. Good morning, Matt. How's it going?
It's going very well. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm super excited to talk today about all thrill-seeking and adventure junkie activities here in Costa Rica, specifically in Manuel Antonio. So thanks for joining us.
Excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So I'm not sure if you want to start and kind of just tell us about your background, where you're from, how you got to Costa Rica, and how you got involved in all the adventure junkie stuff.
Definitely. Well, my name is Matt Rosenthal. Obviously not born and raised in Costa Rica, but my background is actually a financial one. We basically did commercial and residential mortgages for a while, and that's actually how I know Brian, the founder of Paddle 9. But my relationship with Costa Rica is a little bit more established. I've actually been coming here specifically to the Manuel Antonio Bejuco area since I was about 17. My father first brought me. And then when I was, I guess, 20 or 21, I backpacked all of Central America with a buddy of mine. We did about 40 days, went to Panama, Nicaragua, most of Costa Rica, both coasts. So it was a pretty epic trip. Further fell in love with it then. And I also fell in love with it the first time when my dad brought me. I remember as soon as we touched down, I'd never really seen geography or topography like this, and I was immediately captivated. I'm sure you've had the same experience. Even obviously, San Jose, there's better parts of the country, but for a first timer to see those green mountains like that and kind of that landscape really did something to me. So I made a trip back a number of times more, and then ultimately my family ended up getting a vacation home in the country in Playa Bejuco. So for many years, we probably had that. I want to say maybe like 7 years. So I've been vacationing here quite a bit, spending a couple of weeks out of the year. And every time I had a trip here, I just couldn't say enough good things about the country. And the founder, Brian Galloway, who was now my business partner, we used to kind of share in that interest in those stories. And then happenstantially, his life led him to Florida. And then by way of Florida, him and another buddy started a business, Paraíso Water Sports, where they did parasailing and things of that capacity. They had a boat slip in the Capos Marina, which I'm sure you're aware of. The Capos Marina, very popular for fishing and all the things. They have the Offshore World Fishing Championships there now. So big hot spot for that. But so his life led him here, and then we kind of re-bridged that gap based on my experience and time here. And when he had an opportunity and wanted to switch the company over to Paddle 9, and we didn't know what it was going to be, he made a call to me. Fortunately, I had also gotten out of my previous career, mortgages and things of that capacity, and ironically was living in Florida myself. And he called me and said, I don't know what it's going to be, or I know what my plan is and what we want to ultimately do. Do you want to come down and help figure this thing out? And that was over 11 years ago now, and the rest is history.
Awesome. It's kind of funny, right? How when you start to migrate down here, your family kind of starts to join and follow. Like, wait, this is really cool. My mom and I bought some property up in Guanacaste too. Super cool. And tell us, so I wanted to chat with you today because I recently had a traveler reach out and they're like, I've got some kids that are huge adrenaline junkies. They're teenagers. I want them off of the screens. Where should I send them? What should we do? Because I don't want them worrying about their screens or social media, and I want them to enjoy all of the thrills and adventures that Costa Rica has to offer. So I immediately thought of you. Tell us a little bit, have you always been a thrill seeker? I mean, what kind of got you into searching for waterfalls and kind of that adrenaline junkie vibe?
I would say I definitely have always appreciated adrenaline. I was not ever really afforded the opportunity to know how the depth of that until I came to Costa Rica, you could say. I was big into climbing trees. I was big into, like, I played a lot of sports. I played sports hard. I played everything from ice hockey down to tennis and golf and all the things. So I was very active, had a lot of energy, very good athlete, kind of anything that I did in that realm. I wasn't a master of any, but I was like really good at all those things. So just athletic capabilities. I was really little when I was younger. So my aptitude for all my athletic prowess to come out didn't really happen. I was a little bit what you could call like a late bloomer. But once I got bigger and had some more muscle tone, I found out my actual abilities. But I would say that Costa Rica afforded me the opportunity to open my own eyes to myself quite a bit, which it does for many people. People learn a lot of things about themselves in this country. And my aptitude for adrenaline ultimately also, the thing that I would say the most is the ability to handle myself and help other people handle themselves well in this environment, because it's not a Disney, water park. It is the jungle. It's very raw, but there's a lot of amazing opportunities. And as you said, adrenaline and thrill seeking available, but it doesn't come out without its inherent risks. And the thing that I learned most about myself and Brian and our company here at Paddle 9 is we have an amazing way of mixing adventure with safety and efficiency. And that's kind of how we've gotten to where we've gotten. But I would say that I learned a lot about myself, how much I actually love being out in the wilderness in its rawest forms with people.
Well, I think that's really important to note, right? Because I have a lot of travelers that, when they come with 3 or 4 kids, all of the kids are different. They're all on different levels as far as their adventure seeking capacity, or they're, some parents are like, hey, I'm a doctor and I see people that hurt themselves every single day. This is terrifying to me. And I think it's really important to note that on your tours, some of the feedback that I get the most of is that you can be as adventurous or as timid as you'd like. Your guides, and we'll get into the tours in a bit, but I think it's really important to note that the cool part about what you guys do specifically at Paddle 9 is that you give people the opportunity to be as adventurous or not, given, where they're at and their comfort level. So if you could talk about that a little bit later. Or if you just want to jump into maybe your top 3 tours, or even top 1 or 2 that you really think is great to kind of get your feet wet into adrenaline or adventure seeking in the wilderness and jungle of Costa Rica.
A great question. And it's one that our clients or would-be clients ask us all the time. I think that what has kind of propelled us to this a level of availability and service that we offer is specifically the tour that we created called the Full Day Waterfall Tour. Pretty generically named, but that's what it is. The best part about it, and it's kind of has, as you said, the pick your own adventure theme to it. It is off the beaten path. When we started doing this tour, a decade ago, these places were obviously a lot less popular in the age of social media. They were very raw, jungly places, but the hiking is not very long. And one of the ways that we are really tuned into the small details of helping any willing and would-be person to get to these places successfully. We keep a high guide to client ratio to make sure that we kind of key into anybody's athletic abilities or lack thereof, and we'll focus more on people that would require extra help so that the entire family from grandparents down to grandchildren can enjoy it together. That's why the tour does so well, because Costa Rica is already a decision for a lot of people that is putting them outside their comfort zone. And that's okay. Getting outside your comfort zone is kind of where a lot of growth happens. But we want to make sure that these families experience it together. And we always let people know that the Full Day Waterfall Tour is a pick your own adventure. And if you want to jump off a 30-foot cliff, we're going to show you how to do that if you show the ability to be able to do it safely. But if you just want to walk and watch your grandkids or your kids enjoy those experiences, and you want to look at the waterfall, feel the energy, take some photos, we will absolutely make sure that that happens for you as well. And the reviews reflect that nobody's ever forced to do anything that they don't want to do. On the tour, we always say, we're going to push you mentally, but never physically. And people always appreciate that quite a bit. And their reviews do reflect that they felt like they were never forced to do anything that they didn't want to do. But the other members of the group that wanted to enjoy that in an extra capacity were able and given that opportunity. And that is what makes me the most happy, is that we've finally tuned that availability to these types of services. And I've always said they're like one of my favorite moments is from the moment we pick people up after the first waterfall. And we do such a great job now of like kind of breaking the ice when the customers get on the bus and, learning any need to know information about them and ultimately creating an immediate rapport. But the real rapport is created after the first waterfall, when they see the level of skill set that the guides have, how in tune with their needs they are, that their kids are ultimately incredibly safe in our hands with the guides at Paddle 9. And you see like this remaining wall immediately comes down. Like they're like, you can just see it in their face. Wow, these guys mean business. Wow, these guys are excellent at what they do. I immediately feel safe with you holding my as low as 6-month child, your old child in your hands, like as you cross a river. Like you can see that confidence being built, and that last wall of resistance immediately come down. And then throughout the duration of the tour, we just become like this great family. And we use that word, the guides will explain it in that capacity. They'll say, we're not simple tour guides. You're not just simple guests today. We're going to act as a family, as a unit. And that really all congeals and comes together really, really, really well on that tour.
Yeah, I think it's important because, you see Instagram and Facebook videos of people jumping off waterfalls and doing what seems to be, semi-dangerous things, right? And if you don't do it the right way, it could be. But I think it's important to note that while it is fun and exciting, and it's nice to look at on social media, there is a safety aspect, and your guides do have a history of, and they have the proper training to make sure that everyone on their tour is safe. So, any other ones? Any of your top? What would be your next recommendation as far as tours?
First, by far and away the most popular. But then we have like some new stuff that we do. We kind of have a full service opportunity, but we do 3 waterfall excursions. Obviously, Luecke is a famous waterfall. If you've been in Costa Rica, lived in Costa Rica, or been here any amount of times, if you haven't been to it, you've heard of Luecke. It's famous. It is it's a content creation hotspot. So it's been on so many socials all across the world because it is as majestic as people say that it is. And we do a tour there. There is more hiking involved. So when we, obviously speak to customers and we're filtering out the who should and who shouldn't, there is about, it's a 900-meter hike, but it is downhill into the river base. And then obviously what goes down in this case always got to come back up. So there is some extra hiking, but we do recommend that for people that are looking to climb waterfalls, have a more rugged experience, have to kind of earn the carrot, if you will, whereas this waterfall isn't quite as easy to get to. But then a new favorite of ours is we've added a couple years back, we go to a place called Rosenthal, which is in a similar area of Luecke, but it's inland. Like instead of going towards the coastline, you kind of go in, and it's a separate part of the Talamanca mountain range. And I just love it because it's still what some of these other waterfalls were years ago, and more of a hidden gem. Like if we do a tour on a Tuesday afternoon or something like that, we can still get it with literally no other people, which Costa Rica is on everybody's bucket list anymore. Like these places are amazing, but it's growing in popularity. Thus places are a little bit more populated when we get to them. But Rosenthal can still be that place where on a random weekday you can get there, and the only people that are there are the people that are working at that location, the staff from the privately owned lot that they have there. And you still get that feeling of like you feel the raw energy of the waterfall. There's something about a waterfall when it's just you and your group and not energy in there. And that's something that I really appreciate as, somebody who has a business based on waterfalls. But I would say that those are pretty excellent as well. And then, if you're looking for a shorter adventure, we pioneered paddleboarding here. We do ocean coastline, and then we also go in the mangroves. The ocean is beautiful depending upon, the water conditions. But if you're looking for something really relaxed, a nice breeze, lots of wildlife, the mangrove tour that we do is super chill. And then we do also do those with kayaks in both of those locations. And also really cool, we do have these cutting edge, they're essentially fishing kayaks. They have this pedal and paddle systems. So they're really, really cool. They're these Hobie kayaks that really change the game a little bit in that, in your interaction back there. And if you're paddling and pedaling, you can get some super speed. If you don't want to paddle, you literally pedal with your feet, and you have this little rig system on your right hand right there where you can turn the rudder and you can cruise through without even lifting a finger, essentially. And people love that. Gives a good opportunity for everybody to use it. And if you want to get gritty in there and paddle hard, you're welcome to do that. If you want to, your mom and you're just kind of hanging out and cruising with your kids, you can just steer with your fingertips. It's really, really cool. So we always try to stay ahead of the game, with cutting edge stuff and just do things a little bit differently and ultimately curate that experience the best way that we possibly can. And that's what kind of makes Paddle 9. It's those small detail things that we like to get into.
So if I'm a mom and I have younger kids, let's say that they're 6, 7, and 10 or something of that nature, what would be your recommendation? Like if I call you and I'm like, hey, Matt, I've got some super adventurous kids. They're not even into their teen years, but what would be a recommendation for you where, they're going to get a great experience, but perhaps, at a level that's appropriate for their ages? And then the same question for older teens, right? Like, hey, I'm coming with some college kids. I want them to have, a lot of fun. What would be your recommendation for those two age groups?
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of sounding repetitious, it always comes back to the full day tour because it's so well rounded. The fact that there isn't much hiking really rounds it out so that the mom can be like, or the dad, somebody if they haven't, been too athletically inclined for a while and they have high energy kids and they want to let them blow off steam, but they don't have quite as much steam to blow off, if you will. This ties it all together beautifully because these places can be gotten to with guide assistance ultimately very easily. But then once you are at said location, then there's a million different ways to, take all that energy out of it and, create that ultimate experience. And it's at that point, it gives you a good foundation to start. Okay, I'm me, and this is my version of fun. And there's I'm me, this is my version of fun. I'm climbing this wall, I'm jumping off of this. And the guys can do all of those things. So it gives you this playing field that works out for everybody, especially a parent, mother-father combo with kids that are 6, 7, and 10. And then everything is built in succession of essentially the height. The first one, we call it the wake-up call or the appetizer. It has a small jump. It allows us to see people's athletic prowess, if you will, as we move on to the higher stuff so that the guides are given an opportunity to key into people's capabilities. And if they start wanting to do things beyond their capability, obviously in a safety capacity, we will step in and say, okay, this is for you, but this might not be for you. Okay. And then, the parents are having the opportunity to stay toe to toe with their kids for as long as they want and have that opportunity to say, hey, I did that jump. I went down the slide with you. Oh, the 30-foot, that's not for me, but I'd love to watch my kid do it, get some nice video and some nice content. So every angle is being hit in that capacity for all ages. I mean, we have babies on that tour frequently. I don't quite a bit. I mean, I personally, the other day, I was carrying a 6-month-old little boy through the water. And like I said, it's I'm speaking from real experience. The parents are they see our abilities and they're like, here, take my baby. And we get them other side so that mom and dad jump because they still have it in them and they want to do it. And then we have life jackets for everybody. Babies can get in the water and swim and enjoy the blue pools and things. And then you have the little kids who are highly capable, they got all this energy and they're jumping on, climbing, they got guides with them. So it's all happening in essentially great synchronicity with whatever the experience that person deems like they would like to have. They are able to do it there on that tour. The other ones they're more tailored to specific groups to be on it. So it's more of a niche demographic that we have a filtering process to put you on it. The full day is kind of it's our butterfly net. You know what I mean? If somebody they're not sure and they want to go here or they want to kind of be here, everyone can do that. So that's why it's the catch-all because the results speak for itself, and the tour really does have something for everyone. So you don't have to look at the whole family and be like, all right, you and you should do this. You guys aren't going to like it. No, it's you guys can all come. And then if there's some sort of special instruction, for example, people are always like, this person recently had a knee surgery or a knee replacement. This person had this surgery. they will tell us that, especially you guys that, CRV often will do that as well. And we will decide if that person, but that range and spectrum of people that we are willing to take is much greater than the other tours that we do. So that's kind of why it's our catch-all, and the reviews speak for themselves. The guides are all incredible at what they do. They love their jobs, and that passion comes out in the experience. And people always, you can't lie and you can't fake that energy.
And just in summary, for anyone that's, going to reach out to you afterwards or working with a local travel agent, all of your waterfall tours, are they all tours to which you can jump off of, slide down, and be in the waterfalls, or are some of them just ones that you go and observe?
All have availability for interaction in a next level way that you probably thought that you would never have the opportunity to do. And if you want to just sit and take deep breaths and meditate while you look at the waterfall, you are absolutely welcome to do that as well. But our bread and butter of the waterfall excursions is that we do interact should you decide you would like to do it in a very real, amazing way. Yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of opportunities for adventure, do you mind telling us a little bit about, perhaps outside of Manuel Antonio, somewhere in Costa Rica, one of your most crazy adventures?
Our paths have actually crossed before. By far and away, one of the coolest things that we've done at Paddle 9 is kind of when we were building all of this and, looking for opportunities to create social buzz, as social buzz is pretty important these days. Brian and I were having a conversation at a restaurant he used to have a while back, and we were looking at some of these cliff jumpers on the internet. And obviously with a cliff jumping based tour, if you will, we were looking at kind of celebrity guests to bring in the sport of cliff jumping. And we came across a buddy of mine now named Robert Wall. And we were trying to figure out ways to maybe get him down here as essentially a celebrity guide or whatever. And that conversation turned into him bringing, who are also two of my excellent friends now, Jay Briggs and Alex Shirley. So instead of Robert just coming, we ended up having three of them come, and then we went around we created a film with buddies of mine, the Overland Cruisers. My buddy directed it, Andres Miranda, who actually makes incredible music as well. We went around Costa Rica and met up with other factions of cliff jumpers and weekend warrior, Overland Cruisers, adventurer guys all over Costa Rica, and filmed a movie called Giants of the Tropic. You can actually find it on YouTube. It's very well done. I'm very proud of it. And then we did another one a couple years later, but we did come to your establishment that you were working at the time, Peace Lodge Waterfall Gardens, and we were given permission to be the first people to jump off of the 100+ foot waterfall there called Mahia Blanca. And you were there. It was quite an event. And we actually, everybody was fine. It went over without a hitch. It was beautiful. It was serendipitous because we weren't sure we were going to be able to do it as far as the depth checking, the weather scenario, all these things aligned to ultimately allow that to be the grand finale of this film. And, as I said, we weren't even sure it was going to happen. And it kind of the pieces all came together beautifully for the end of that exhibition. And we ended up doing it. I didn't jump that year. I was injured, unfortunately, but it went so well that we did it a couple years later. And we, instead of 3 people, we brought, my buddies, the same guys, and then 6 more. So we had 6 more cliff jumpers, and we had a whole event. And I actually ended up jumping off of the waterfall myself. I wasn't supposed to, but I did it. The energy was palpable that day. And that's how cliff jumping goes. You listen to your inner voice, and if the vibe is right, it pulled me off that cliff. I will say that. Brian's here with me, and he was standing there, and I was like, dude, I got to do this. I got to hold my jacket. And he got to clip me. Doing this for you, brother. And I jumped off. And that was easily one of the most adrenaline pumping moments of my entire life. I was high for 3 weeks. Anytime I needed a little adrenaline pump, I could just look at that clip and get juiced up for the day. I think, 100+ foot water. I think that was my first and my last. I've jumped off of some 80-foot stuff pretty easily. And I've jumped off of Nyaka a million times. I think triple digits one time. I'm 40 years old now, so I don't really think I need to do that anymore. Even I landed beautifully. I was sore for a few weeks just from the impact alone, but it was definite. Just talking about it makes hair on back of my neck. Pretty monumentous moment for me. It's a long time in the air. When you do something like that, especially around your buddies, like the vibe is insane. Like everyone's so happy. Like everybody else that did it too, everybody was okay. It's a pretty big human feat to do something like that, especially while there's that many spectators around. And it was those days when Mahia Blanca was jumped off successfully, and then we went off and did it again. And just the culmination of the whole event of those 3 weeks filming and shooting, and the success, those were some great moments in my life that I will obviously never forget.
I just remember being so impressed. I was there when you guys were doing when you were doing the depth checks. I was there when you guys jumped off. There were people at the bottom. I don't know if they were certified lifeguards or if they were just knowledgeable friends. But I was like, okay, these guys are adrenaline junkies, want to check this off their bucket list, but they're very professional. And this was 6-7 years ago. So it's funny that our paths, crossed back then, but I remember being very impressed, of course, with the jump off of this huge waterfall, but also the professionalism that was behind the whole. I mean, you guys were there for how many hours? You had come previously. The morning of, you were there for hours doing depth checks and all of the things. And it was not just, hey, let's go jump off of this, cliff or huge waterfall, right? Like there was math and science behind it, because no one had ever done it before. And I remember being on the phone with the owner of the property, and he was like, "Are they okay? Are they okay? Are they sure? How's the weather?" And that was quite nuts. So if anyone listening has gone to the Waterfall Gardens, perhaps on your way from San Jose to Arnold, the largest waterfall there is the one that Matt's talking about.
Yeah.
Crazy. To anyone listening to this podcast or parents, do you have any tips? Perhaps there's a really nervous parent with younger kids or even teenagers that want to go and do some of these adventures for the first time. Do you have any recommendations or tips or words of advice that you could share with them to perhaps make them feel more at ease?
Are you saying in a tour capacity or on their own?
Yeah, on their own.
Well, I mean, to just kind of piggyback off of what you just said, and I greatly appreciate you saying that. I think it's starting to change because it is, being brought out so much, and it's really kind of like, rocketing upwards in this sport of cliff jumping. I think the stigma in many years previous was that it's just kind of like these camping dirtbags that just don't care about safety in any capacity, which it could not be further from the truth. And I think that was showcased beautifully in what you said you saw. And it sounds like it struck a chord for you where you had the stigma that those types of security measures were not ever put in place for things like this. But when you're talking about people with skill sets, of doing triple, quadruple, and at this point, people are doing quintuple flips off of, 100-foot waterfalls. It is no small task. If everything is perfect, there is still great risk. And the risk is these young men and women's lives. So to the thinking that they don't take every necessary precautionary measure to ensure that all risk that can be mitigated is done so and done so appropriately and properly, it couldn't be further from the truth. And you saw the efficiency that goes into it about getting underwater, the area that you could land, all potential areas that you could land, not just one, to make sure there's not a root, that there's not a rock, that the bottom is sandy. That's in the movie when we filmed it. There's a big moment where Robert Wall realizes the depth is good and that it's a sandy bottom. There's certain places that you should jump, that you should not jump. You should find out where your body can go and any potential risks thereof. And even if you know somebody that has done it, and this actually recently happened, the waterfall that we go to on our full day, Portalón, can be very easily gotten to by families on their own accord. It's not far from Capos, but there was another tour company that they got there before all the other tour companies on that day. They had known that companies like us and stuff were jumping. but we depth check every single time. The guide always gets in the water before each new day to make sure that it's so clear. This other company, unfortunately, the guide just assumed that everything was fine, and a head of water had come the previous night, deposited tons of sediment. He jumped into a 1.5 feet deep of water, fractured multiple bones in his shin and ankle, and had to have multiple surgeries. So that and that he was guiding a tour. So like, think about the experience there that, is being created. If the guide gets hurt like that, it's no fun for anyone. It's specifically the family and ultimately the guide. And it's a learning lesson that it doesn't matter who and how many people have been going there, or if it was hours ago. Always get in the water and check for yourself with your own eyes where you could potentially be landing to make sure those hazards do not exist or can be averted safely. And then as far as any of these other places are concerned, that's why, having a guide in places like Costa Rica is really important. Even as I sit here and say, unless you're a experienced cliff jumper, at least have some knowledge of it. A lot of these things until the guides do it for you, you wouldn't even look at it and be like, oh, I can definitely do that. Obviously, there's a demographic of people out here that can. But by far and away, the large majority of, specifically, as you said, families going with like their, teenage kids and things like that, potentially younger. A lot of this stuff to the naked eye isn't even recognizable unless you see other people doing it, which a lot of these places here, you will have that opportunity. But even then, to that, I would say, even if you're seeing other people do it, still get in and see with your own eyes and feel with your own touch what's going to happen before the experience occurs. And always mitigate any potential risk the best that you possibly can. Because obviously, worst case scenario, we have all heard of it. Somebody knows somebody that, cliff jumped a long time ago, didn't check whether they're paraplegic, not with us any longer, or injured themselves in some grave way. But that's the bell curve with any extreme sport. That's where it always was. It's all these people are crazy. Well, no, now amazing feats are being done in the extreme sports category with incredible training, body conditioning to make sure that the feat that you're going to do, your body can sustain whatever impact or, that ability, and staying within inside your comfort zone in a decent capacity until you're able to learn. Like stretching your barrier is always good, but not taking leaps that are beyond your capabilities is how you maintain, a good professional level of the bell curve so that you can learn new feats within yourself and not get hurt. And I would always say, like, err on the side of caution. If you're a family that's traveling with your younger kids, don't do anything that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up for the sake of, trying to get a clip or something to put it on Instagram.
Well, I think it's interesting, right? Because it's probably the parents that are a little bit more cautious, but we've got some young travelers that fear is not existent for them. And so that's why I think it's great that you and your team are. You say the ratio of guides to travelers are?
We're like depending upon how busy we are. It depends. Like if we have a lot of other tours, but if the guides are available, we're like a 4 customer to 1 guide ratio, like 4 to 1, 5 to 1. So for like a group of 15 people, we will put 3 guides. And then sometimes if the guides are available, we would put, 4 on there. And so excuse me, something in my eye. But that would be pretty much is our mainstay, standard of protocol.
And just in summary, what do you think makes Costa Rica so unique for adventure seekers or people that are looking for an adventure, whatever adventure means to them?
I think a big piece is of geographically where it's located. The idea of coming to Costa Rica from ultimately Canada, the United States. Obviously, we have, I'm sure you guys deal with them quite a bit too, but like Europeans, like it's a smaller bag of people that come from Europe than, Canada and the United States. But I just, over the years, there's just been a lot more flight plans that come to Costa Rica. And ultimately, the idea of getting to a place that's like, oh my God, like, we all saw Jurassic Park when we were younger, or arachnophobia. And like, it's like some jungle scene of Costa Rica. We all have a memory of that. and you like, for me, I used to get inspired, be like, oh my God, I would love to know what it's like a place to like go so rugged and jungly and raw and like outside my frame of reference from a guy from New Jersey, but I think it's not impossible to get here. And it's well known that like the infrastructure is based on tourism. You don't have to speak Spanish to come here, although it's great. Bringing the language barrier down will elevate your experience a great deal. You can speak English. You can get here within many places. Like if you come from Florida, it's a 2.5-hour flight. You know what I mean? And you're an entirely different world. If you live in Texas, we get a lot of people from Texas. You got a 3.5-hour flight from New Jersey, where I live. I mean, I'm on the Northeast where my family is. I mean, a direct flight from Newark, New Jersey is 5.5 hours. So it's not unheard of to get on a flight for that length of time and to come to a world that is entirely different than anything that you've experienced. So it makes that, I guess you would say, the leap across the pond a lot more attainable for some people and not such a big deal. Like if you want to, like, I want to go to like, Cambodia or Vietnam or Thailand, but it's like, you got to be on a plane for 2 days. That's a big pill to swallow for a lot of people. Costa Rica, ultimately, you'd have a day of travel, and then it's a smaller country so that, if you're putzing around here, you can get to different areas and a multitude of different microclimates in ultimately a shorter period of time. You live here, how the travel can be here sometimes, as a crow flies, to get 40 miles can take you a long time if you get stuck behind like a coconut truck or something like that. But ultimately, you can see a lot of this country in a shorter period of time inside like a 10-day vacation. I mean, you can fit Costa Rica inside Lake Michigan. That's how small it is.
And I try to explain to my travelers that have no idea, they've never been to Costa Rica before, especially places like Manuel Antonio, when we're looking at beach properties, right? You've got Guanacaste, Quepos, Uvita, Osa, you've got the Caribbean side of the country. And so whenever I talk about Manuel Antonio, I always say it's kind of like where the rainforest meets the ocean. What about like wildlife that you guys see on your tours?
I mean, I think that's what makes Costa Rica, and you make the best point. The wildlife is like second to none here, specifically Manuel Antonio. I think that's what makes this place a gem. The wildlife is abundant. I mean, you got lapas, you got all 3 types of monkeys running around here. I mean, we even have white-tailed deer. It's crazy. And you can pretty much guarantee a sloth sighting. I've never met a person who doesn't love sloths. And at any time, I don't care how long you've lived here. If you see a sloth, like your phone's coming out, you know what I mean? I don't care if you've seen 5. But I think just the wildlife here that is running rampant. Obviously, we're in a gem. Manuel Antonio has quite a bit more than many other places. And that's what makes it. It's the most visited national park, which we do tours to the national park as well. That's why. I mean, other than like Corcovado, like which I have been to, Corcovado, I would say it's vast. I mean, I did a tour down there. Within 10 minutes of coming in off the boat, we went through like the Sierpe River and then did that. Like we went to I can't remember the name of the park, but it was within 10 minutes of getting on land. I saw a mom tapir with its baby. I saw all 4 types of monkeys. We saw like a tyra, like 50 different kinds of birds. And I was like, or do we continue the tour or do we go home now? Everything? Because I think we literally then walked on the trails and that was like all the animals like greeted us at the shoreline. It was crazy. But here you can be having, food at Emilio's Cafe and like, 6 pairs of lapos go by. You can hear a howler monkey. Then you see the white face or the TT monkeys or a sloth. It's just at any given time, just being here, even if you're not in the park, you're essentially in the national park. So to have that experience where not too many places on the world just engulf you in animals and wildlife and beautiful plants, there aren't too many places in the world that like you said, the jungle kisses the ocean. But while it's kissing the ocean, there's animals running around everywhere around here. So it's pretty amazing experience.
Awesome. Well, no, thank you so much for your time. I think that we covered a lot of bases and you guys live in a gem. You said it best. Manuel Antonio is a great spot for not only adventures, but wildlife and national parks. And if you want to do any water sports, it's a great spot for it. So thank you so much for your time. We will leave a link here below with Matt's information with Paddle 9. You guys can go follow them on their socials, watch them do some fun flips and jumps off of big, long waterfalls. So thank you so much for your time, Matt. We are super excited that we get to work with you and your team every day. And we will be in touch soon.
We are eternally grateful for you as well. Thank you for having me. We hope to see the rest of you guys down in Manuel Antonio. Pura vida.
Pura vida.